Welcome to this Business Central launch event for the 2023 Release Wave 2, where in this session we're going to talk about what's new in Power BI and reporting for developers. My name is Kenny Pontoppidan. I'm a program manager on the product team, and with me today I have a very special guest.
Hello, my name is Enrico. I'm a software engineer in the Business Central team that manages integrations, including the one with Power BI.
And you'll see more about that in a few minutes. In this session, we're going to talk about how the world is changing. Not everything, but with analytics. We'll talk about Power BI Embed, and lots of new cool stuff happening here. We'll talk about data analysis on queries, a new feature that is even not yet in the release notes, but we wanted to show you. Multi-worksheet data in Excel layouts. Talk about teaching tips and help think, like making reports and queries discoverable and easy to understand, and finish up with some learning resources and go-dos. So let's get started. The world is changing. That's a dramatic thing, and it is really dramatic, but it's kind of, let's focus a little bit here on reporting in Business Central. So here things are changing, but reporting in Business Central means actually traditionally three things: analytical reports, processing-only reports, where you just use the request page as something to get some input from the user, and printable documents such as invoices, documents that needs to go to a PDF. In this session, we're just going to talk about the analytical reports. Okay? Now, within organizations, different roles in that organization typically have different needs for analytics. And I say typical many times on this slide because, of course, if you are working in the leadership team, you might also need to do ad hoc analysis and so on, right? But typically, when you go up the organizational hierarchy, you also have a need to aggregate data, simply because you need to lose some detail to get the bigger picture. Similar when you work on the actual business processes, the aggregation up to a KPI might be losing too much detail. So typical ways to consume data is when you work on the actual business processes, you need something that is operational, likely to be on screen, related to your task. When you work in middle management, you typically need some curated reports as well as ability to do ad hoc analysis. And when you move up to the leadership roles, this is where KPIs, dashboards, financial reports is what you need. So based on this understanding of analytics in different customer organizations, we put together a vision on how we want this analytical reporting story for Business Central. And we came up with the overall vision that this has to be for online consumption, not print. Right now, that's the way reporting works, right? We go to a request page, we get a PDF, and if we want a different set of data, we run the report again to get a different PDF. Let's not do that anymore. So we came up with three different roadmaps or part of this journey. The first is consuming data. We want core business scenarios for Business Central to have out-of-the-box reporting analytics simply built in, so no need to get additional developers or buy solutions to do your core business scenarios, analytics on those. Number two, most analytics users' need can be covered with no-code or low-code solutions. And three, we want to enable customers with easy access to data for advanced BI and analytics. And of course, in the spirit of Business Central, ISVs as well as Microsoft as part of the core product, it should be possible to deliver analytics solutions with apps or pertinent extensions. And just highlighting one thing more, there's of course in reporting also something we call document reporting. This is not part of this presentation, okay? So let's start with new Power BI embed capabilities for the AL developer, because you're here in this session because you're a developer. And Enrico, let's hear about the new capabilities.
Thanks, Kenny. So let's talk about what you as a developer can achieve with the Power BI embed with Business Central release Wave 2 2023. So we want to highlight some points on what you can do. So first of all, you can open a report in expanded mode directly using an AL action, for example, so the user can use all the real estate on screen. You can also prevent the user from changing which report is shown in a certain context inside Business Central, and also you can enable them or prevent them from changing the report page. Also, we are taking advantage of the new Power BI scorecards, which were released in the last few months. And now you can also embed them in Business Central and see them as if they were any other Power BI report or dashboard.
So, Enrico, can I ask you something?
Yeah, of course.
First of all, for the middle one, this actually means, like prior to this, Power BI embed was maybe more thought of as an end user experience where end users would embed their things. But it seems to me with this, ISVs, AL developers can now control like delivering Power BI content with their apps. Is that kind of how you see it as well?
Yes, that's correct. So in some pages, the partner will know which report makes sense to show. And it doesn't make sense to clutter the user experience with a lot of actions and selections. Because, for example, that's just one report you as an ISV want to show, for example, in your own AL page, or also in a Business Central built-in page. So it has definitely a much more developer focus from this wave.
Really nice. So, and then for the Power BI metrics, so this is part of what we hope with this no-code experience for the vision, right? With scorecards and with metrics, as long as you have KPIs defined in Power BI, end users can now set up scorecards, point to the business KPIs they want to track, and just use out-of-the-box, no-code experience for Power BI with metrics to track their business.
That's correct. And that's very powerful because, of course, the metrics can come directly from Business Central or from some other system that you might have inside Microsoft or external. As long as you can get the data to Power BI, you can build your own KPI and show it within BC.
Very nice. Let's see how it works.
So let's talk about code. How do we achieve this? First of all, let's talk about how you embed a report in expanded mode directly. So we have this record, which is Power BI displayed element, and you can just set the element type, in my example here, a report. You can just add the report ID and the report embed URL. This information is available from the Power BI REST APIs, so you can get them directly from your code, or in case you want a specific report to be shown, you can, of course, hard-code them directly. And then you can just spin this Power BI element card page, which is going to display the report in full page. We'll see that in a minute. I just want to mention the other capabilities that I had in the previous slides. So, for example, you can have the show panes in expanded mode and show panes in normal mode flags. These are controlling whether the user can change the report page and can change the report filters while viewing a report. You can also just have a report open on a specific report page in case you have a multi-page report. That's also a new capability. And last but not least, if you want the user to not change the report shown in a page, so this is not about changing the report page, but changing which report is displayed. You can set this flag lock to selected element to true. But of course, this is a lot of code in slides, so I'll just move to show you how it works in reality. Let's transition to my Visual Studio Code. I have my per tenant extension, and for example, in my example, I want to add a Power BI report on a fact box for the chart of accounts. This is one of the pages where we don't provide a report or a part out of the box inside Business Central, but you as a partner can add it just with a few lines of AL code. You can see here the example. And this is just how to set what we call context for a part, but then you need to tell the AL code which report you want to show for this specific context. And in my case, I'm doing this as part of the onOpenPage trigger, but you as a partner might have a more complicated logic for this. As you can see, just as I showed you in the slide earlier, you just need to set basically 4 flags. So the element type, the element ID, and the element embed URL. You also need the context, which is basically the identifier of where these reports will be shown. It needs to be, in my case, the same string as the one I had further on top of the page for the Power BI part. So let's just publish my extension, and let's see how it works in reality. So this is my chart of accounts page, and you can see on the right that I successfully embedded the Power BI report in Business Central on the fact box. Now, you might see that in this particular view, the report is quite small, but we'll actually address that later. First, what I want to show you is the actions we talked about. So here, for example, the user can select a different report, or if they have multiple reports enabled for this particular view, they can jump to the previous and next one. But as a partner, let's say I don't want that to happen. I can just lock to the selected element, and now I can just update my extension. And now, if I refresh the page, you'll just see these actions are completely gone. So this enables you as a partner to prevent the user from messing up with the Power BI setup.
Yeah, because you say messing up here. It could be that user is experimenting and suddenly she or he cannot go back to the original intent. So here you're actually just guiding the content, saying it should be this, and you cannot, by mistake, get out of this context.
That's correct. So the user might just get the wrong report displayed here, or the wrong set of reports, or it might also just select no reports, so they just see the initial screen. And we of course, want to avoid these and give you developers the option to, let's say, railroad the user into getting just the reports you want to show them. Mm-hmm. But as I mentioned earlier, this report is the one we actually have as out of the box with Business Central, but it has 2 report pages. But here you can see only one page, which is the one with the nicer graphs, if you want. But let's say that you, as a partner, want to point this report to a different page. Well, you can do that by just setting the report page value. In my case, this is the name of the other page that you couldn't see until now. And let's say I also want to show the page selection so that the user can jump back and forth to different report pages. So I will just enable these 3 flags. And you will see that now my report is going to point to a different page, which has just a column chart. And now I will be able to jump to the other page, which is the one we saw earlier, and just back and forth as a user to whichever page I need. This also affects the panes in expanded mode. So here you can see that I have the filters, for example, pane open. So if my report has any filter, from here I'll be able to tweak them just to see whichever data I need. In my case, this report doesn't have any filter set, so that's just no option for me. But if there were, this is also guarded by the flag that I set in the AL code. But now, as we mentioned earlier, this report is actually pretty small here. And in this context, maybe I'm very interested to only one of these pie charts. So it would be very nice if I, as a developer, could zoom into one of these pie charts and just make sure that's the only one that the user can see. That's also a new functionality that is available from the current wave. So instead, you can have a report visual. As you can see here, I am just changing the element type to be a report visual, and then I am adding some additional parameters for the report visual key. In this case, I will need the page ID and the visual ID. For the rest, everything is exactly as you saw it before. So let's publish this extension and see how my single pie chart will look like on the chart of account fact box. And as you can see now, I only see my pie chart. In this case, of course, the report is not very relevant because the top 5 customers might not fit that well with the chart of accounts. But that's exactly why we need you as a developers, because you have the knowledge and the capacity to just get the customer exactly the reports they need.
Can I say something here?
Of course.
So what you saw Enrico do was traversing the visual hierarchy inside Power BI artifacts. On the top level, you have a report. A report consists of multiple pages. I actually think the different, like the tabs you showed is also new in the visualization.
Yes.
Right? The ability to, if you embed the report, you can go through the different pages. And on a particular page, you can have multiple visuals, and even seems like we can even point to a particular visual inside a report. So full flexibility into that hierarchy of visuals, now available for developers. And maybe you should start learning a little bit of Power BI. It seems like this is going into the space of development.
That's absolutely correct. But talking about hierarchy of things you can display inside Business Central now, we haven't yet shown any scorecard.
Oh, yeah.
So I have now created a demo action, which I will call Open Q2 Goals Expanded. And let's say, for example, that I have my scorecard, which just tracks my most important goals for the current quarter. I can just embed it inside Business Central. Here we also added an action full screen. So in this case, my screen is zoomed in for this demo. But if you want to see just the scorecard in a more expanded mode, you can also get to full screen using the action as a user. And this is just achieved by what I showed you earlier in the slides, but I will also show you again here. You can just set, in my case, a temporary record with the Power BI displayed element. And as we saw earlier, you just need to specify the type. In this case, Power BI recognizes scorecards as reports. So you have to set it as report, and then you need the scorecard key and the embed URL. That's all you need to achieve what I just showed you.
Pretty cool. I think hopefully this will get you more interested in Power BI development and integrating with AL, because now you can make Power BI a seamless experience with your apps. Maybe as a VAR, you could start deploying pretended extensions that add this nice embed experience for the customer to have both something that demos nice in a pre-sales, but even more importantly, for go live, that you actually embed the reporting experience directly into Business Central. Love it.
That's very correct.
Love it.
I'll give it back to you, Kenny.
Thank you.
For the next section.
Perfect. Okay, so low code, no code, Power BI, metrics, directly embeddable inside Business Central using AL. Let's switch gears a little bit, but not too much. In this wave, we added the ability to do data analysis not only on list pages, but directly on query objects. Query objects have been in the product for a long time, but never with the strong UI for analysis that we are adding now. You could always just do / query equals a query object, and then you would see kind of a list page on the query. But that's not really what queries are for. Queries are for analyzing, mocking up data, joining data. That's where queries are really useful. And until now, it was mainly used for performance tuning, but not anymore. There's now this new analysis toggle button on a query. And we also added support for run objects. So for instance, you can add an action on a page extension. It doesn't have to be on a page, it could also be your own. But let's say you want to have a new nice way to analyze item by location. And you build a fantastic query that joins item with location and other tables and make that available. Then directly in on the items lists, I'm adding a new analyze items action that simply runs the query. The query is called item hero query because it's a hero query for item. And you can see here in the UI how it is embedded directly as an action. So the user doesn't really know it's a query. For them, it's just part of the report on the page. So let's see how such a data mockup looks with a nice UI on top. So here I'm working with inventory. I'm on the items list page, and look, my very nice developer added a query here. I don't know if it's a query, but you know, because you just saw the previous code. It's called analyze item ledger. And if I go here, I actually have complete data analysis, slice and dice experience now on queries. Everything works as expected. You can rename, you can have additional analysis tabs. In this particular example, I'm slicing or grouping item description by location, but it's not location code as the one you saw or you know from the list. This is a mock-up of the data from the items lists page or the items table, and then joined with the location table. And you can see here for the Mexico swivel chair that we are using the warehouse names and not the codes. And if I even want, you can see them down here, if I even want the cities, I can just drag them in here. And if we go for Mexico now, you can see East Warehouse is in Atlanta. So this allows me as a user to simply slice and dice the data that how it should be, not necessarily only these like code names and weird things that is in displayed on the lists, but the names and the things that I really care about. And all the other things, pivot, grouping, so on, all of this works. It's just based on a query and not a list page. So as a developer now, maybe you should think about what are the queries you can bring to your users, and then they will kind of do the reporting and things out of the box. So the only thing that is code here is the data mashup, and then you can unblock the users to do their ad hoc analysis or data or reporting. Speaking of exactly this between low code and no code, this is also the area of Excel layouts. We added Excel layouts a year ago as a way for end users to both use Excel for the layout experience with no or low code, and also for consuming the data. Now, what the previous layout feature didn't handle parent-child or overview detailed data types very well. So that meant if you want to do Excel layouts in the past for these types of data, it would be very cumbersome in the Excel, the way you developed your Excel layouts. Well, not anymore. With this change, with this wave, we are adding a way for you to simply have multiple worksheets in your report, in your Excel, and then that just leans so much more into the way you model things in Excel. Let me show you what this means. So on the report object, as a developer, you now have a new property called Excel layout multiple data sheets. And if you set that to true, you go from a model where you have one worksheet with these null, you can see all these areas of nulls, and each of these columns here would be a different data item. Whereas in the new model, you just have one data tab or worksheet for each data item, right? What this allows you to do is, first of all, much easier integration to Power Query inside Excel. So you can kind of model on top of these different worksheets and enrich the data, maybe have computed columns, rename things, whatever you like in Power Query, as well as then adding the other Power element in Excel, which is Power Pivot. Power Pivot allows you to then model relationships between these. So in this example, you can see the value entries, customers, and items are three different data items in the report object. They then get their own table inside with Power Query, and then with Power Pivot, we define relationships between them to create a really powerful interactive report in Excel. What I think will happen with this is, once this takes off, is that end users will also start working a little bit more with Power Query and modeling, and in the same kind of tools that are the same ones as in Enrico's world with Power BI. Power Query is the same language, the same experience both in Excel and in Power BI. And I think maybe this could also help the transition, maybe even for end users, from Excel into Power BI. But let's see. The only thing you need to do as a developer is when you create your data sets is just one property. Excel lay out multiple data sheets, set it to true, and this whole new experience unlocks in Excel. But it doesn't matter if we create nice content if users cannot find it, right? And if they don't understand it. Like, we would never put in functionality into Business Central without any explanation and documentation. What is this for, and how do I use it? Why shouldn't it be the same with report objects and queries? So teaching tips is now available on queries and on reports, and as well as context-specific help. So it works just the same as what you would expect with on pages. So in code, it's the same thing. On request page for a report, you add about title, about text, and context-sensitive help page, just like you would do on a page. And look, it just works. Teaching tip directly on the request page. If you click Show Help, you would get the same information in the help pane. And the context-sensitive help page will now, if you set it, it will now show up in help, and you would just provide the normal guided experience for your reports and your queries as you would on pages. For queries, exact same thing, about title, about text, context-sensitive help page, and a new kid on the block usage category for queries. If you set this to reports and analysis, at least in version 23.1, it will also show up in Tell Me Help and in Report Explorer. Same thing here for queries. You get these context-specific help and you get the teaching tips. So, how do you consume all this? Do we have any resources to help you out? Yes. First of all, Power BI. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we offer in Docs for Power BI, for helping Power BI and AL developers?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, I want to mention that the code that I showed you earlier is for the major part available on the BC Tech repo, which you can find at aka.ms/bctech. You can also find documentation on how to handle these different parameters in our Power BI documentation.
But if you're an AL developer and what's this Power BI thing? How do I get started? We have all been there. I've been here, Enrico, new world, what do I do? There are excellent learning paths for Power BI right there on Docs, free of charge, it doesn't cost you anything except your time. So spend a few 10 minutes every morning, start learning this new world, and I think you will make something that is going to be great for your customers. For reporting, specifically for Excel and the things you see here, we are also updating the current documentation, actually including also ways to make your report layouts resilient to failures as well as your reports, so that the reporting experience you give as an ISV will just be much better for your customers. We have Excel samples, so aka.ms/BC Excel samples. This is where you get guidance on how do you define good data sets, how do you define good layouts, different techniques in Excel. There are many different things you haven't seen before, I'm pretty sure. Table formulas, dynamic arrays, Power Query. How do you do this? Well, there are some guidance for you here. Videos from the community if you want to learn like that. If you want to do presentations for events or conference internally or externally, there's a Power BI PowerPoint deck for you here. Just download and take it from there. And there's an FAQ for everything you might want to ask but were afraid to. As well as what Enrico mentioned, Power BI samples. So you have, Enrico has added really nice code samples here for, again, BC PBI, Power BI samples. And that's available with code samples that you can just take down and start using tomorrow.
And they should be quite clearly commented. In case you don't remember exactly what a parameter does, you should find the code comment in the source code.
So, to conclude, the world is changing for AL developers in the context of analytics. So next time when the customer asks, can you build me a report? Don't ask, oh, sure, how would you like these columns and how should it print it in, don't do that. Instead, ask the customer, what is it that you need and for what and for when and so on. And only then choose which technology should be used. Think about that triangle on the organization. Maybe it will be in Enrico's world of Power BI embed, right? Or it could be in the build a query, or maybe there's even a list page that offers this so that built-in data analysis just works. Or if it's the case that the customer is very proficient in Excel, or maybe they want Excel, just make them a data set and let them care about the layout with Excel. So the go-dos, most important thing, understand the customer's analytical requirements. Stop just developing blindly reports. Start supporting their analytical needs. So for Power BI, learn how to do it and why. Do you want to talk about why that's important, Enrico?
Yeah, sure. So Business Central is, of course, an ERP system. That's where the data is. But Power BI, the B in Power BI stands for business intelligence. And where do you get the business intelligence from? From the data in Business Central. So these two tools are just related with one another naturally. So just go and learn Power BI. Power BI is the Microsoft tool of choice for business analysis, and in particular for Business Central data.
And maybe this, instead of, that's the top advice here, instead of build me a report, it just maybe for the customer just means build me a query. And then you unlock them. AL queries are not just for performance analysis anymore. It's a powerful tool where you can mash up data, give it to the customers. They have ad hoc analysis and self-service, and they are probably going to be fine with just that. A lot of customers, a lot of users might just work with queries and lists and data analysis directly there and will never need to run a report or ever again. And finally, for Excel, you need to kind of think of Excel layouts as a different way of reporting. Your job as a developer is providing the data set. Then the customer's Excel savvy person who takes over is dealing with the layout. So instead of build me a report, maybe the customer is just asking, build me a report data set. And when you do that, I'm pretty sure that some of your customers who know Excel much more than you do, who live in Excel, they will even learn you a tip or two about Excel. I'm pretty sure of it. So, other launch sessions that you might want to do after this. Of course, if you are here as a developer, what's new in developer tools, that's one of your main sessions. But also, once you kind of get the feel of Power in other of the Power tool, Power Automate, business events in Dataverse, so on, there's a full session on that, what's new in integration. And then the third option is the session we have is for analyze on lists and query, but more as a focus from the functional consultant or the end user. So you might want to augment the developer focus in this session with a more end user focus in the last session. If you want to learn more, as always, Yammer is where we have the in-depth discussions. X, Twitter are the small for AKA links, there's one link to rule them all, BC all. If you have ideas of new functionality or things that can be improved, BC Ideas is where we take you. And of course, office hours, BC office hours. After the launch event, we continue doing office hours where it's not only content, but also Q&As and ways to interact with the product group. These are also recorded, and the recordings are available on that URL. So with that, Enrico and I would like to say thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great launch event.